welcome to the Bella Grace podcast, where we are empowering you to embrace the beautiful grace found in recovering your authentic self. This season, we are telling stories of people who are building a sober life and having fun doing it. But we are also sharing stories about people who grew up in homes with parents who were addicted to substances. And this week, we have my new friend, Ed, on the podcast. He and I met through a Facebook group. He is a personal trainer, a nutrition coach, a strength coach, and he's currently building an online men's sobriety coaching program. So we have that in common. I have a sobriety coaching program as well. I like to say that I help people get and stay sober. So I help people who are in early recovery or who are wanting to get sober and help them navigate the early recovery stage. And then I help people who have been sober for years. And I saw something on your Facebook, one of your posts that said, people in recovery, you feel stuck, you're bored. And something else I read on there. And I was like, yep, those are the people that I try to help, because I feel like all too often we get sober and then all we can think about is our using days because sobriety is boring.
Yeah, it's like, now what?
Yeah, exactly. And so what I try to do is I try to help people figure out, when I say recover their authentic self, recovering that childlike joy that addiction took from us, and rediscovering the things that really set your heart on fire and using those to build a fun, sober lifestyle. Because when we first get sober, I feel like we spend so much time just trying to stay sober, and we don't realize that you can still have fun. Like, you should be having fun. Yeah. So, okay. All right. Well, why don't you tell us your sober journey, where you started, how it started, and how you got where you are today?
All right. Well, about 3.5 years ago, I officially got sober, February 2020. It started months prior to that when I found out my mother died. She died of complications from alcoholism and breast cancer. And so that's kind of when the thoughts of quitting started going through my mind, because that's scary to just hear that's how my mother died. So months passed. I started feeling some internal pain. And so I just started having these conversations with myself. I'm either going to keep drinking or end up in the emergency room at some point, or I'm going to have to deal with whatever happens with if I even get withdrawals. So I just went the route of sobriety, and I was sort of scared into sobriety. And it's kind of ironic because, I was drinking to escape my reality. I think that's why anyone does stuff like that, because they're not, something about their daily life or whatever they're not happy about it, so they use that to cope. And so that's kind of what I was doing. And it's ironic because I was scared I was going to die. So, I got sober. I started just reading a lot of self-help books, listening to podcasts that were, personal development based, trying to, make myself better, not just health-wise. And soon after that, I started working out. And eventually I just started thinking about becoming an online coach. This was still a couple years ago. And so it's been interesting. I've been having a lot better outlook on life. because of being sober. Sometimes I still think about what happened, or what happened when I was still drinking. I have memories, and I still, I feel bad about it, but you can't change the past. I think only what we do now in this moment determines our future. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. So I know you said that your mom was an alcoholic, right? So do you feel like that influenced you to drink, or were you drinking to deal with the fact that your mom was an alcoholic?
I don't believe that it influenced my drinking at all, really. In fact, while I was drinking, I would come up with whatever reason, and looking back, they were just excuses. I don't think there's any real reason that I could have ever have had to go that route. I don't believe that, alcoholism and addiction is hereditary. I was in therapy very briefly. I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, and the therapist told me that's a myth about addiction being hereditary. I know it has run in my family, but I don't believe that just because my parents or their parents did it means that's my destiny.
Yeah. We can all rewrite our family, or stop the history and rewrite it and have it take another route.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to break my family's cycle of that addiction, because it was with my parents. I know my grandfather on my father's side was alcoholic, and there's other people in my family that have suffered from it. So I'm trying to be an example of trying to stop that.
Yeah. Stop that cycle of drinking. Yeah. So how old were you when you took your first drink?
First ever drink, I was a little kid, actually.
Wow.
Yeah. My mom, she would just be on the phone, and she'd have her beer open, and I'd be like, "Mom, can I take a drink?" And so that's technically when I had my first taste. When it started becoming a problem, though, I was about, I think I was about 24, 23 or 24. I started drinking regularly, and it just got progressively worse as time went on.
Yeah. Was that time in your life particularly stressful, or were there other things going on that drove you to start drinking more during that time?
Yeah, that point in time, I had already been married and had a kid by that point, and I was already separated from my son's mom, so I was on my own, and that was the first time that I had been on my own when I was around 22, 23.
Mm-hmm.
And my finances...
Wait, let's stop. By the time you were 22, 23, you were already married and had a kid and divorced.
Technically not divorced yet, but we were
okay.
done. We were done. Yes. It's the fast life.
Yeah, I was gonna say you started really young.
Yeah, not intentionally, but that's how things played out.
Yeah. So how old were you when you had your son?
I was 21 years old.
Oh, okay. So not too young. That's how old I was when I had my daughter. Yeah.
Okay.
But people now that she's a junior, people are like, you have a junior? I'm like, yes. I had her when I was 21 because they just automatically assume, I guess I look younger than I am. So they automatically assume that I was like a teenager when I had her because I look young, I guess.
Yeah, my wife now, she had my stepdaughter really young,
Mm-hmm.
and my stepdaughter is already going to be 20 years old in February. So, I mean, it's like we were made for each other. We both had our kids early.
Yeah. Because it is a different lifestyle. There's a different mentality with having your kids younger and parenting them when you're younger, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is totally different.
I was really scared. Not in the sense that I didn't want to be a father, but in the sense like, how do I do this? Like, I'm responsible for this little human.
Yeah. Yeah. And so tell me, what was it like growing up with a mom who was that was an alcoholic?
It was, to me back then, everything just seemed normal.
Yeah.
And, I every now and then my parents would get in fights. That's when I get the signal that something would be wrong. And I would just go off on my own, do something else besides be around them. And I'm sure her alcohol use, or my dad's, I know my dad smoked marijuana back then. Something, their addiction, either one of their addictions probably came into play with an argument. When I was little, it all just seemed normal. And as I got older, I started picking up my mom's alcoholism little by little because she started getting worse. And, there was one night where I had to finish cooking dinner for my family because she was just laid out on the floor. And I think at that point, I didn't even put her alcohol and her acting like that together, but I know that's why. And yeah, around the time I was 16, that's when my parents separated. My mom's alcoholism was part of it. And me, my brother and sister, I have a brother and sister, by the way, both younger than me. We were pretty much, our mom was pretty much taken away from us, like in the sense that, like, not, she wasn't taken away by like CPS or anything like that, but she was just deemed not capable of having a relationship with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so my dad kept her, or tried to keep her away from us. Every now and then we had visits, but I really don't remember how those went.
Yeah. And you were how old when the divorce happened?
I was 16 years old.
Yeah. That's a very, it's a hard time for you as a like normal teenager. Like that time of life, as hard as it is. But then when you add this into the mix, like I feel like that sometimes just compounds the pain. And like you said, like it always seemed normal to you, which I think is another thing with children of alcoholic parents. Like you don't realize that your life isn't normal because it's your normal. That's all you know.
Yeah, you're right. That's all you see. That's all you know. And to that end too, I didn't really have too many buddies growing up that I would just go to their house, and hang out with them. So I never got to really see another family happen and how they did things.
Yeah. And that's another telltale sign of families. We call them sick families, but it just a dysfunctional family that has an alcoholic, an addict, whatever, in the family unit, is that usually there is that piece of isolation where you're isolated from other friends and you may not even realize it or know why it's happening. Like it may have been completely unintentional on your part that you didn't have a lot of guy friends growing up, but it is very common in addicted families for there to be that social isolation because you don't have your parent encouraging you to go out and socialize because they're home drinking and they don't socialize. So you're not modeled how to be a social creature.
Definitely. And in regards to the program I'm building for men, I think, at least for me, I know there's probably more men out there that can relate, but I don't think too many of us are raised to be social creatures, to eat correctly, exercise, have confidence. We're not brought up that way. We're not brought up to believe in being confident, especially from having parents that aren't confident themselves. And that's one of the reasons why I want to start this program, because I broke past that and I just had enough of the negative self-talk and all around negativity that's been in my family.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to show people there's a way out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that so when you were growing up, did your parents model healthy eating or healthy social behaviors like that, or even healthy exercise?
When I was little, like really little, I'd seen them work out in the garage here and there. They used to drag me to their parties with their coworkers and whatnot, which involved alcohol. I think mostly though, when I was little, I was just told that I gotta eat all my dinner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eat all of it.
Yeah, that was I think we're probably around the same age. I'm 38, and that was so common in the 80s, 90s, was like, eat all your food. You have to eat everything on your plate, instead of the mentality that we have now of like eating healthy foods that feed your body, like acknowledging that some people don't like certain things. Like, yeah, my brother hated certain foods, and then come to find out he was allergic to something. We're like, we didn't even, that didn't cross their minds. It was just like, eat all the food on your table. I feel like we grew up in a very dictator-ish family dynamic during those times. It was like, do what you're told, eat all your food, don't speak unless you're spoken to. Like, kids should be quiet, seen and not heard.
Yeah, and I was a shy kid too. I'm still to this day trying to break out of that, even with doing this interview. So, and I'm doing a lot better. I'm coming out of my shell. It's a really good learning experience for me. And I'm just taking every opportunity I can to speak up.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to share our stories because, like you said, guys aren't always taught to be social, to express their emotions. Our generation, especially, like we were just talking about, wasn't taught to eat healthy and, take care of your body. We were taught, follow the rules, do what you're told. And I feel like now our generation really is coming out of that shell and trying to build communities of people that are dealing with the same things. And it's not just recovery communities, but like the health and fitness community. You have people all over. Like, I'm also a photographer, and there are so many communities out there where we're a bunch of photographers. You have a Facebook group and you just support each other, whether it's like editing tips or, hey, I know someone that's doing a freestyled shoot over here if anybody needs to practice wedding photography. Like, we have changed the landscape of what it looks like to grow and to help each other grow. And I'm the youngest of 3, and my oldest brother and I both struggled with substance abuse. My middle brother did not. He was the straight A student, has 2 different careers in 2 totally different fields, nursing and engineering, like, brilliant, driven, doesn't give up on anything. And then my oldest brother, so for us growing up, my parents had a very tumultuous marriage, right? Like, they were always fighting. My oldest brother saw all of that. Like, he was the one that would get in the middle for my mom. Like, he was the one that would defend my mom. When my parents split, my dad took custody of me and my middle brother, and my older brother chose to stay with my mom. And they struggled. They struggled a lot. Like, my mom didn't have an education. I mean, she graduated high school, but she had never worked because she met my dad when she was 18, and was a stay-at-home mom. So she'd never worked before. So she didn't have a work history. And so my brother was about 16 when all of this was going on, and same age as you. And he had to really grow up and help my mom survive and help my mom pay the bills. And he would go down to the pool hall and hustle up some gas money so my mom could go to work the next day. Like, he's a pool shark. Like, he's great at it. But until very recently, that brother still struggled with substance use disorder. Like, it's been less than 10 years since he has finally gotten and stayed sober. And I feel like our generation, we were one of the first generations to really, really deal with divorce and have divorce be a huge part of the landscape of society, because finally divorce was okay, and so you had these couples that divorced in the early 90s, like end of the 80s, like that lump. And then you have the kids that were the product of those divorces. And I feel like it made a huge impact on our mental health, having to grow up, having to deal with those adult situations, and not having been well equipped by our families to begin with emotional intelligence and social intelligence of like, I can turn to a friend to talk about this. I can turn to a friend to just hash it out and say, hey, I'm hurting. Can you help me? Like we weren't given those tools with our generation. And so I think it is really important, the work that you're doing, to show guys that they can get sober, and here are the sober tools that you can use, and sharing your own story of like, this is me. This is what I lived through. I made it out, and I'm breaking that cycle for my family, and you can too. Like that's super important. So tell me about, and I know you're just starting your sober coaching program, right? Okay, so tell me about it. Like, what are the components? What do you plan to do? Tell me a little bit about it.
All right. So the program is essentially structured in a way that, well, the program itself is pretty much how I managed after I got sober. Everything in it, like working out, a change in mindset, nutrition, eating correctly, the mindset work. I'm basing that off of stoicism and a little bit of spirituality. And because I've read a lot about stoicism and spirituality, so it
give me a brief breakdown of what that means.
Stoicism.
Yes. All of it. Yeah.
Okay. So Stoicism is an ancient philosophy, and it's basically living to attain tranquility, and it's sort of like Buddhism in a way. There's basically three main principles in Stoicism: controlling your perceptions of the world, the engaging in proper actions, and knowing that there are things that are within your control and there's things that are out of your control. So it's these three principles that can pretty much govern a Stoic. Our perceptions of the world, I believe, how we perceive the world is, like how we feel inside. So like if we're negative inside, or we're having negative self-talk, negative thoughts, we're going to project that out into the world, and that's what we're going to see. That's what we're going to experience. And then engaging in proper actions, I think that's self-explanatory. Like, you just, be kind to people, be strict with yourself, tolerant of others.
Yeah. Be a good human. That's my whole philosophy.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much the basis of most philosophies too. The spiritual side of it is a practice of meditation. I had practiced meditation here and there. I had read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Mm-hmm.
That was such a great book. It helped me out so much because it talks about just being present, like being in the moment. In the book, he talks about that there's no past and no future, that they're all in our mind, and we only have the present moment. And so one of the ways that I like to practice being present is through meditation, just clearing my thoughts, becoming aware of my body. It's a great experience to meditate. Deep breathing. I also do the Wim Hof method. I don't know if you know who that is.
No, I don't. I was about to say, tell me about this.
Wim Hof, he's, I forget where he's from. I believe he's from some country in Northern Europe. But he has this breathing technique where you take about 20 to 30 deep breath, or 30 to 40 deep breaths. You take a deep breath in, and when you exhale, you don't let all the air out. So every time you're doing like 30 to 40 breaths, and then after your 30th or 40th breath, on your last breath, you hold your breath for as long as you can. And then when you feel the urge to breathe again, you take a deep breath in, and then you repeat the cycle for about 3 to 4 times.
Well, that's a new one. I've never tried that one or even heard of it. I think breathing techniques are paramount to pushing through triggers and cravings in early recovery. That's one of the things I always tell my coaching clients is like, I always give them different breathing exercises that they can do in the moment as they're trying to exit the trigger or the craving. Because I think breathing exercises, they really do. They ground you. They bring you back to center. Like it reminds you of like who you are.
They make you exist like right now. You're in the moment when you're breathing. When you're conscious of your breathing, you're present 100%.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people who drink or do drugs, like, or whatever, gamble, sex, whatever your addiction of choice is, your unhealthy coping mechanism of choice. I feel like when we get to a certain point, it almost runs on autopilot. Like it becomes as second nature as breathing. Like that is just crap happened at work, get a drink.
Yep.
Someone has good news, get a drink. Like it just becomes a habit. Like it literally is just like breathing, and we can take for granted and not even notice our own breath until we're in a panic situation and our heart is racing and we're panting, and then we're all of a sudden hugely aware of the fact that we are breathing. But if we can become aware of our breath and use it as a tool to calm ourselves down and to be present and help ourselves realize that I don't need that drink. Like just because, and I always go back to this example, like I used to smoke a lot. And so every time I got in the car, I lit a cigarette. And my fiance told me, like, if you could just unlearn how to like drive, like if you could learn how to drive without smoking, then you could quit smoking forever. He's like, it's just that every time you get in the car, you think you need a cigarette.
Yeah,
And
it's almost like the physical acts that you start doing, those become routine, and so you associate those, like when you go to reach for the cigarette or you reach for the beer or whatever, however you go about doing that, whether it's a cigarette in the car or it's after work, you just become conditioned to that, and so it it takes your life over. It becomes who you are.
yeah, you do. You lose your identity to it. And it's so hard to retrain your brain to pivot your automatic response. So, how do you help your clients or your potential clients for your coaching, and in your fitness coaching, whatever you take your pick? But how do you help your clients pivot from their natural responses to the new healthy response?
It's all in the mind. You have to get your thoughts under control. Like my drinking, it all started with my thinking, and there just has to be that shift from negative to positive. Physically, though, you cannot. I don't think there's anything better than a high intensity workout to raise your frequency and just bring you up to where nothing bothers you. Like you don't need anything. You're good.
Yeah.
It's like a reset.
And it really is like the science behind that. Like I always tell people, it's like a dog. You know how dogs shake? They're actually doing that as an emotional response, or like it's like their refresh button. They're shaking out their emotions. They're shaking it out to, like, my dog does it when she's nervous. She'll like jump out off the couch and like shake. And I tell my clients, my daughter, I tell everybody, I'm like, we don't have that natural instinct like dogs do to shake out our emotions. So we have to purposefully do it. We have to be cognizant and actually make ourselves physically shake out the emotions. And I oftentimes will suggest HIIT workouts, high intensity workouts, because it is like a physical release of the stress, the trauma, the whatever, the craving for alcohol, like whatever it is that you're feeling in that moment. If you can get a high intensity workout in, like it will help your body release all the crap, because it releases endorphins, and those endorphins, yeah. I have a journal, and it's called Get Your Daily, or Take Your Daily Dose or something. I created it and I don't know the name. But it's a daily dose, and it's dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. And it's a daily journal to help people actually make a plan for ways to get all 4 of those neurotransmitters throughout the day. So, and that's one of the keys is that I have for endorphins is at least 10 minutes of activity twice a day, whether it's just a walk around the outside of your work building or whatever, like plank for however many seconds, like something a few times a day to get those endorphins going, because it really does boost your brain health. It helps you stay and like feel happy.
Yeah. Yeah, it changes your mood, and then over time, it's gonna change how you look. So I mean, then you have not only a better mood, you're gonna feel more confident in your own skin. because you've built up all these workouts over time. Of course, with the proper nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a huge proponent for just physical activity.
Yeah. So you have the spiritual / emotional part of your program with the, what did you call it? I already went blank.
Stoicism.
Stoicism.
Yes.
I'm going to put it in the comments. I'm going to put it in the notes. Stoicism and spirituality. And then you have the physical part with working out.
Yes.
Yeah. So, are those the two main components of your program?
There's those, and then my clients are going to be tracking their macronutrients as well.
Okay.
And I lay out a list of foods that I recommend for, muscle, gaining lean muscle, burning fat.
Wow. So it's not just fitness, it's nutrition and it's emotional health too.
Yes.
Yeah. Because a lot of our serotonin is created in the gut. And I don't think people know that, how much the gut and the mind are connected in like your emotional health and your gut. Like if your gut is all out of whack, you're going to be fatigued, you're going to feel depressed, you're going to feel anxious. Like there's a huge connection between the brain and the gut.
Yeah. And about, simple carbohydrates.
Mm-hmm.
You eat simple carbohydrates, they don't make you full. So your mind's going to keep telling your gut that you still need to eat more.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little fun fact.
It's true. It is so true. And they're addicting.
Yeah, simple carbohydrates like anything sweet, anything processed,
Yeah. Cakes, donuts, Little Debbie's.
Yeah. And it doesn't help that they make the packaging, all bright and fun looking.
Yeah. Going back to like our childhood, like we were raised on that crap.
Yes.
Like, we were told that was Pop-Tarts. I read a study the other day about Pop-Tarts, and it was like, I think Pop-Tarts is like the #1 worst thing you can do for a child brain. It is like the worst food that you can feed a child. And yet, so the nonprofit that I work for, we help low-income families. And I guarantee you 90% of the people that I work with have Pop-Tarts in their cabinets because it's cheap, it's fast, it's easy. And so we have all these kids crashing by second period because they had a Pop-Tart for breakfast.
Yeah. I can't recommend enough for breakfast. A bowl of oatmeal, no sugar added. Myself, I add in my oatmeal some whey protein, some frozen berries.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Frozen berries and sliced up banana. That's my breakfast.
I never thought about the protein. We eat protein shakes, protein pancakes. We use protein powder for everything in our house.
Yeah.
Never thought about oatmeal.
Yeah, I've put it in oatmeal, yogurt. What else? I'm sure there's something else I've put it in. I just can't remember.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, okay. So who is your ideal client for your coaching program? But any of your coaching programs, whether you want to focus just on your sober coaching that you're building or your fitness stuff, who is your ideal client?
For my signature program, my sobriety program, my ideal client is going to be someone that was like me, just tired of feeling tired from alcohol use, tired of being deniable, tired of kidding themselves, tired of thinking about quitting and not doing it, or thinking about doing something and never ever doing it. Like, you're just constantly thinking about things that you're never going to do, and it's alcohol that's tying you down. And so I want my clients are going to be tired of stuff like that. They're going to want to get in better mental shape, better physical shape. And I mean, mentally, to make it through sobriety, you're going to want to be in a good mental state.
Mm-hmm.
For me, miraculously, I never went through any withdrawal symptoms, and I did just fine without alcohol. I would have dreams about breaking my sobriety, and every so often I would think about alcohol, but I never ever touched it again. I was like, okay, it's still leaving my system and my mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Having thoughts about it. It's still in my brain. It's got to purge. It came out of my body. Now it's got to come out of my mind.
Yeah, that's a powerful one. I don't think people realize that. Like, that just because you quit the substance doesn't mean that your brain has forgotten about it.
Yeah.
It takes way longer for your brain to recover than it does for your body to recover, because you go through detox in 24, 48, 72 hours, depending on what you're doing. But the detox of the mind is where the real work is.
And that's what made me pick up some books and start reading. That's what made me start listening to other people. Instead, I had to get out of my mind and figure out what to put in it besides the thoughts that I was having
Mm-hmm.
on a daily basis.
And that's important too. You can't just expect it to go away. And it's the same thing with physical cravings. Like we were talking about with me smoking in the car, or whatever your ritual is prior to using. Like, a lot of times that doesn't just go away. Like, I couldn't stop driving, right? Like, I had to get to work. So instead, you have to replace it with something. So I used to get in the car and get a sucker. I gained like 10 pounds because I ate way too many lollipops, but it only lasted a month or two, and then I was good. But it's the same thing with your mind. Like, you can't just let your mind sit idle. You've got to pour new things into it to start reshaping your thought process and your mindset to one of sobriety rather than one of using.
Yeah, and that whole thing about filling your mind with other things besides that, I mean, from childhood on, I mean, we should have been doing that. Just a constant state of learning. There should never be an end to learning. I mean, I don't think there's anyone that knows everything there is to know. In a, I guess in a facts and figures way, but the knowledge that's been around for centuries, like Stoicism, and you have all these popular authors now and entrepreneurs and other speakers, they're all saying the same thing that has been said throughout generations and generations. But how many people are actually listening?
Yeah.
How many?
Oh, go ahead.
How many people? How many people are, like how you and I were, where we're escaping reality? What if that's why they're not able to listen to these people? Like, how many people how many people truly have a problem? Sometimes I wonder about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I know with our society the way that it is, and our view on alcohol, and our view on unhealthy eating or sex, like, we see alcohol, like mommy wine culture is huge. Like, we have made it normal to fill up your Yeti with wine and walk the kids to school in the morning. We have made it normal to have alcohol at our kids' parties. We've made it normal to have alcohol everywhere. It's at the aquarium in downtown Dallas. Like, we went with friends and totally missed the first 4 floors, like just zoomed right through the first 4 floors of stuff, because it goes in a circle like this all the way up to the top, and then you take the elevator down, because the bar was on the 4th floor. So we didn't see anything on the first 4 floors because we were straight lining it to the bar.
Yeah.
Like, we've made it normal, and we've made the sex industry is a whole nother thing. Like, we've made it normal to buy and sell and trade sex. Like, that's normal. And so, yeah, how many people out there have a problem? Even the food that we were talking about, like, we've made it normal to eat Twinkies for breakfast and Pop-Tarts for breakfast. And it's too expensive to eat healthy for certain people because fruits and vegetables are expensive. And I could go broke with the amount of protein powder we buy at my house. It's not cheap.
You don't want to know how much money I've spent on protein powder.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm actually sponsored by a small company, and I get their products at wholesale cost. So I at least have that.
Yeah. That's a little savings. Yeah. But we've made it so normal to do all these things that we've made it really hard to see when someone has a problem.
Yeah, and going back to childhood, thinking that what our parents was doing was normal. I mean, maybe subconsciously we're actually just going through that again, where except it's more public. We're just taking it public.
Yeah. Yeah.
And having it be in front of your kids, there's a lot of kids that don't listen to their parents, but they see their parents. They see what I saw what my parents were doing. I couldn't put words to it, at some points in my life when I saw it. But I saw that, and then later on in life, when I started developing my own conscience, it clicked.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, they were doing that in front of me.
Yeah.
So your kids, they will probably mimic what you do.
Yeah.
If not sooner than later, they will. So it's important to put them on a correct path.
Yeah. How old was your son when you stopped drinking?
He was, I believe he was about 14 years old.
Okay. So, do you feel like your sobriety has made an impact on him?
I honestly don't know, because back when my son was about, I want to say 8 years old, his mom took him to go live up in Salt Lake City.
Okay.
So I would only see him, during every other holiday, every summer. So my time with him hasn't been that abundant. And he's seen me sober. Like I've even had him work out with me. One summer he was here, I had him, because I don't know what's going on over at his mom's, but he is not in the best shape for an almost 18-year-old.
Yeah.
And so one summer he came, he said he wanted to start working out with me. And so that's what we did while he was here. I got him to lose 15 pounds
Wow.
in a month, I believe. It was 1 or 2 months, 15 pounds. Just tracking his macros and lifting weights.
Yeah.
So he knows what I'm about these days.
Yeah. And I feel like now is a really good time for him to see you changing and to see the changes that you're making and to see the difference between who you were then and who you are now. Because he's right on the cusp of potentially starting his own family, walking into his own career, starting his own adult journey, and having you as a model to say, like, that doesn't have to be your path. You can choose this other path. And look, I'm doing it. And it's fun and it's great and it's working. That's amazing that you're doing that.
Yeah, and he's always been a good kid. He's gotten into, your typical teenager trouble here and there, but it was all just BS. But mostly he's been the best son a guy could ask for. And
I love that.
I'm super proud of him.
Yeah.
Right now he works out with his own group of friends, and he's been sort of sparring like with a heavy bag, so he's getting into boxing.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm glad he's going in that direction. All I can do is support him.
Yeah.
And if he ever wants to work out, he knows I'm down.
Yeah. Well, okay. So if you could give one piece of information or one piece of advice to someone like you, someone who grew up around alcohol, who went on to use alcohol to cope with life stressors, and finds themselves in the midst of that time in their life where they're drinking and they are tired of feeling stuck, but they don't really know how to get out of it, what would you tell them?
I would tell them it's okay that you're in the situation that you're in, but it is not okay to stay in that situation. Let me help you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how do people find you? On social media?
Social media, I'm on YouTube as well. Instagram, my handle is at lifesentence_fitness. My Facebook is facebook.com/Eddie.Bones.75, I believe. I can never
I'll
remember that
link it
one.
all in the show notes.
You can also find me on YouTube at lifesentence_fitness. On YouTube, I've been doing about 3 videos a week, and it's all just been sort of mindset talking. I'm just driving in my car and talking.
Yeah. Love it. What is one last question and then we'll finish up. But what's the story behind Life Sentence in your handles?
So that's my personal brand, Life Sentence Fitness.
Mm-hmm.
That comes from, I spent all the time that I did in alcoholism, and now I'm doing the exact opposite. Like, I'm giving myself a term of life towards these habits, this new way of correct living, or what I believe to be correct living.
I love it.
That's where that comes from.
Well, that's awesome. And it's a great mindset to have. A life sentence of right living.
What it's about.
Yep. Well, thank you for being on and sharing your story and imparting some wisdom to our listeners. I will link all of your socials in the show notes, and people can follow you and stay tuned for more with your coaching program that you're going to be offering soon. And I'm excited to see everything that you do in the near future.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, until next week, be well, be kind, and may you find some joy this week. Okay. Bye.